Imagine the start of your week on Monday morning, November 23rd, 1981. You're in the kitchen, ready to brew a cup of tea, and your mind is drifting between thoughts of your upcoming workday and the hint of chill in the November air outside your window. It seemed just like any other dreary late autumn morning in Britain. But as you stand there, musing over the mundane, the sky begins to shift ominously. The clouds thicken and darken, and a brisk wind starts to rattle the trees. Over the span of 5.5 hours, Britain would witness an extraordinary and unprecedented weather event, 104 tornadoes sweeping across the country. This was no American tornado alley scene. This was happening right here in Britain. A destructive parade of twisters carved through landscapes from Anglesey to Essex and from Liverpool to Hull, marking the most prolific tornado outbreak in European history. Tiles were ripped from rooftops, chimneys collapsed, and caravans were tossed into the sky like toys. Remarkably, amidst this chaos, no lives were lost. To understand how that day unfolded, we need to go back to the preceding day, Sunday, November 22nd, 1981. It began uneventfully. The typical British weekend routine was in full swing. Families gathered for the customary Sunday roast, radios played softly in the background, and some might have enjoyed a brisk walk in the crisp air. Yet, a powerful meteorological drama was beginning to brew over Scotland. A low-pressure system, meteorologically known as a bomb when it intensifies rapidly, was gaining strength with alarming speed. On Sunday at noon, the barometric pressure stood at 994 millibars, but by the same time on Monday, it had plummeted to 968 millibars, a staggering drop in just 24 hours. The atmosphere was set on edge, preparing for an extreme reaction. In contrast, southern parts of the country were under a draping of high pressure, drawing in warm, moist air from the south across Europe. This confluence of warm southern air and cold Arctic air from the north was creating a volatile mix ripe for something severe. By Sunday evening, meteorologists were alert to the brewing storm. They anticipated intense winds and heavy rainfall. But tornadoes? Those were for the vast American Midwest, not for these shores. Monday morning dawned with a sense of foreboding. It was grey and unwelcoming. Across Wales, the people awoke to an oppressive heaviness in the air, an indefinable sensation that something was brewing. As the morning progressed, rain began to fall, a typical scene for a November morning, or so it seemed. But just after 10 a.m., the sky above Anglesey yielded a menacing surprise. The first funnel cloud touched down. At RAF Valley, near this Welsh island, lightning had already been dancing across the sky at the early hour of 5 a.m., hinting at the atmospheric instability. By 6 a.m., the weather station at Aberporth in southern Wales was abuzz with activity, as instruments recorded a rapid drop in pressure and sharp swings in temperature. A swirling weather system was taking form just off the western coast of Anglesey. RAF Valley had grounded its aircraft as a precaution due to forecasts predicting winds of 55 knots, strong, but certainly not the worst Holyhead, a town familiar with fierce Irish sea gales, had faced. Then, just after 10:30 a.m., something beyond just a gale arrived. Sergeant Whelan, a member of the RAF Valley's Marine Craft Unit, was at Porthy Feline House in Holyhead when he spotted the phenomenon. High above, a massive black cloud, stretching a mile long, drifted ominously over the seaside town. The wind whipped into a frenzy, wild and untamed. As he turned his gaze back toward Holyhead, he observed the cloud starting to curve into a hook. In less than a minute, this hook descended, and a mushroom shape began to form at its top. Finally, the funnel touched down, a dark column filled with water vapor and debris, swirling with relentless fury. The event began with a brief but intense whirlwind that persisted for about 15 to 20 seconds before dissipating. Shortly thereafter, a more formidable tornado emerged, approximately 10 seconds later. This second funnel descended with greater force and moved eastward, causing significant destruction as it tore through the town of Holyhead for a brief yet devastating 10 seconds before rising back into the sky. Both tornadoes were assessed as F2 on the Fujita scale, a classification that ranges from F0, indicating the least severe, to F5, denoting the most extreme and destructive of tornadoes. An F2 rating signifies that the tornado had winds powerful enough to remove roofs from well-constructed houses and even lift vehicles from the ground. These two formidable tornadoes ravaged the central area of Holyhead, carving a destructive path from Holyhead County School directly towards the railway station. At the school, the violent winds ripped a substantial section of the roof away, hurling wooden beams, bricks, and slates across the schoolyard as if they were projectiles. The timing of the tornado was particularly ominous. Had it struck just 5 minutes later, Students would have been in the yard for their morning break, potentially leading to catastrophic injuries. Instead, they remained inside, witnessing the terrifying spectacle through their classroom windows, paralyzed with fear as they watched the roof above them vanish. Teachers played a critical role in maintaining calm, instructing the children to stay away from the glass to avoid potential harm. Yet the chilling experience left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Every child who witnessed that ominous dark funnel descending from the clouds had the memory etched into their minds permanently. In the heart of Holyhead, particularly down Station Street, the destruction was chillingly profound. 20 homes fell victim to the fierce tornado's wrath, their structures badly compromised. The railway station was mercilessly torn apart, a symbol of the chaos that ensued on that fateful day. Each and every house on the street bore the scars of the calamity, losing essential parts of their architecture. Roofs were peeled away, windows shattered into countless pieces, and chimneys crumbled, cascading to the ground as if in a carefully choreographed disaster dance. Witnesses likened the street to a bowling alley after a perfect strike, with chimney pots tumbling down one by one, their remnants scattering onto the pavements below. But the windows provided the most telling sign of the tornado's might. On Station Street, an eerie pattern emerged. The windows didn't simply break inward, they exploded outward with remarkable force. Shards of glass ejected into the street, not blown into the homes. This abnormality is a telltale signature of a tornado's presence. Unlike ordinary destructive wind, a tornado's force is one of suction. It doesn't push, it draws everything out. One moment, the scene outside might seem like a typical rainstorm, but in an instant, your window could burst outward, your chimney ending up in the street, a testament to the power of more than just wind. Outside of town, in the rural expanse of the Penrose Files area, the havoc continued with a mobile home lifted off the ground, flipped upside down, and obliterated beyond recognition. The vehicle of a local farmer didn't escape unscathed either. His van was hurled into the air like a rag doll. Meanwhile, a hefty coal bunker lid embarked on a wild journey around a house, finally crashing at the front door, cleaved in two like it had been struck by a giant axe. The destructive episode of the Holyhead tornadoes may have been brief, spanning less than 5 minutes, but the aftermath left a long trail of repair work that would painstakingly unravel over months. As the incident ignited a flood of calls to both fire stations and police headquarters, one unsettling thought loomed. It wasn't just an isolated event, it heralded the start of something far more extensive. By midday, reports surfaced of Manchester falling victim to the chaotic front, with 4 tornadoes striking the Greater Manchester area with quick succession. St Helens soon reported multiple tornado touchdowns, followed swiftly by Warrington. The destructive front advanced at an astonishing pace, barreling southeast across the land. Everywhere it reached, the sky let loose funnels that kissed the ground with devastating results. In Shropshire, a particularly ambitious tornado embarked on its journey from the village of Norbury in the south of the county. It traced a relentless northeast path, carving through open fields, rolling hills, and the vast Shropshire countryside. This tornado set a remarkable pace, staying grounded for an astounding 37 miles, a distance exceeding the stretch from London to Brighton, before its fury finally came to a hesitant end near Whitchurch, a market town near the Welsh frontier. The town emerged with damaged roofs, toppled trees, and battered properties, marking the tornado's tumultuous exit. As the hours of the day waned into the afternoon, Birmingham became the next unwilling battleground. 3 tornadoes made their presence felt across the city, with places like Erdington, Kings Heath, and Saleigh Oak suffering substantial hits. These urban tornadoes surged through residential neighbourhoods with no mercy, summarily ripping roofs off terraced homes, sending chimneys crashing through top floors, and reducing whole streets of windows to glimmers of broken glass. People poured into the streets, eyes wide with shock, trying to piece together the surreal events they had just endured. The neighbourhood was transformed into a landscape littered with debris, your neighbour's roof marooned in the roadway, chaos reigning under the menacing darkness of an unsettled sky, and the constant dread of wondering if more tornadoes were inbound. Meanwhile, across the expanse of the West Midlands, 3 additional tornadoes delivered their destructive briefing, culminating in a day of severe battering for the entire region. As the clock ticked past 2 in the afternoon, the tranquil community of Stoneleigh in Warwickshire found itself under siege from the elements. An F2 tornado, notorious for its destructive capacity, became the second mightiest of the day. Its wrath was unleashed upon a stationary caravan park, a site not filled with temporary holidaymakers, but with over 20 large caravans that served as permanent homes for families. These caravans were year-round residences, complete with personal touches and memories ingrained in their walls. But to the tornado, they were nothing more than playthings. In a heart-stopping display of raw power, the tornado hoisted these caravans into the air as if they were toy models. Some caravans flipped upside down with alarming ease, crushing belongings and lives. Others were obliterated entirely, fragments thrown several meters from their original foundations. A few were catapulted like projectiles, landing further afield amidst the confusion. Inside these mobile homes, families huddled together, witnessing through quivering window panes as pandemonium shattered their normalcy. They heard the furious howl of the wind, a noise akin to a freight train barreling through their lives, metal structures wrenching apart, all until, in an instant, silence descended as swiftly as the chaos had erupted. Meanwhile, across the nation, an unparalleled urgency gripped communication lines. Phones were in a state of constant activity, ringing off the hooks at fire services, police stations, and local council offices. Each call carried a similar tale, accounts of funnel clouds that tore through communities, leaving roofs ripped clean off, chimneys crumbled to rubble, a resounding plea for assistance echoing from every corner. Yet the atmospheric front showed no sign of relenting. It persisted, a relentless force charging towards the southeast at a staggering velocity of over 30 miles per hour. Each handful of miles traversed marked a fresh scene of turmoil as another funnel materialized, grazed the earth, and wreaked havoc. It struck, devastated, withdrew, and veered onward, leaving behind a trail of destruction. By mid-afternoon, the region of East Anglia became the new epicenter of this calamitous outbreak, with the turmoil crescendoing to its greatest intensity. In the turbulent time frame between 1 and 4 p.m., the counties of Norfolk, Suffolk, and Cambridgeshire bore witness to an astonishing barrage. A jaw-dropping 43 tornado reports flooded in from these areas alone, 43 instances of nature's unchecked fury. Over the course of just 3 short hours, nearly half of the day's total for tornado sightings was recorded in one particular area. These weren't just a few isolated incidents but a flurry of tornadoes touching down with varying degrees of severity. Some were relatively mild, classified as F0 tornadoes, hardly more than fleeting brushes against the earth, appearing almost like phantom gusts that barely kissed the ground before vanishing. Others, however, were more menacing and powerful, clearly etched into the landscape as F1 tornadoes. These carved pathways through the countryside, cutting across fields and farmland with a relentless, destructive force. They tore through fences as if they were paper, stripped roofs clean off barns, and snapped trees like twigs, flinging debris far and wide across the once quiet countryside. In the rural expanse, farmers found themselves as helpless spectators to nature's fury. One moment offered a serene, uninterrupted view of their fields. The next was a scene of chaos, where a swirling vortex of air carved a violent path, tearing through valuable crops, hoisting hay bales skyward, and rendering outbuildings to mere splinters. These twisters didn't linger. They moved on, targeting the next farm, the next village without mercy. The day of terror climaxed when the final and perhaps most significant tornado made its presence felt just before 4 p.m. in Essex, slightly east of London. By 3:46 in the afternoon, this whirlwind of chaos that had reigned for 5 hours and 26 harrowing minutes concluded its assault. The tumultuous front moved past, the sky started to shed its ominous hue, the wind subsided, leaving Britain engulfed in a profound, uneasy silence as it struggled to comprehend the catastrophic series of events. Initially, in places like Holyhead, residents believed their misfortune stemmed from an isolated freak storm, bad luck striking at an inopportune time. Unbeknownst to them, as they scrabbled through the debris of their immediate calamity, Liverpool was falling prey to similar devastation. As the day wore on, Manchester, Birmingham, and Hull would recount their own brushes with these fearsome weather events. The fragmented puzzle pieces began to form a cohesive, alarming picture by evening's approach. News bulletins from all corners of the UK began piecing together the day's true scale. BBC Radio, never wavering in its duty, broadcasted continuous updates as local newspapers deployed photographers to capture the extent of the demolition firsthand. It became apparent that this was no string of isolated incidents but a widespread phenomenon sweeping across the nation. In response, the Tornado and Storm Research Organisation, known as TORO, mobilized with impressive efficiency, launching an expansive initiative to compile reports from the public. Television networks like Anglia Television put out urgent calls for information, while local newspapers inked requests for eyewitness accounts. Public engagement surged with a deluge of reports emerging from every corner of England and Wales. Eyewitness accounts came from all walks of life, capturing experiences of individuals, from farmers and factory hands to policemen, firefighters, schoolteachers, and homemakers. Each had witnessed something unbelievable, Each account added to the growing anthology of this nationwide calamity. The number of reports escalated rapidly, 50, then 70, climbing to 90. By the culmination of Toro's data collection efforts, a staggering total of 104 confirmed tornadoes had swept across the land. On a single afternoon, in just 5.5 hours, Britain experienced more than 3 years' worth of tornadoes. Historically, the country sees about 30 tornadoes a year. This day eclipsed that number threefold and more, with all recorded events happening quicker than a standard round of golf. Previously, the year 1970 held the dubious honor of the most tornadoes in a single year, 80 in total. November 23rd obliterated this record in mere hours. Remarkably, despite the scale of destruction, only 8 people suffered injuries and not a single life was lost. The tornadoes were swift and, for the most part, weak. Their brief duration and rapid movement likely prevented a tragedy on a scale that could have been unimaginably worse. Had the storms been more robust, persisted longer, or struck at different times, the tale would have differed dramatically. Yet, perhaps by sheer serendipity and fortuitous timing, Britain was left grappling with shock and material damage rather than human casualties. The cataclysmic event of the 1981 tornado outbreak profoundly altered Britain's perception of tornadoes. Until that day, tornadoes were regarded as unusual but largely inconsequential phenomena that barely registered as threats. The events of November 23rd shattered that complacency, embedding a newfound respect and wariness of such natural forces in the national consciousness. Researchers delved into the mystery of why Britain seems to experience such a high number of these natural phenomena, especially when compared to the vast landscapes of America. It was discovered that, per square mile, Britain actually witnesses more occurrences than the United States, though the ones seen in Britain tend to be smaller and less intense. For those individuals who experienced the dramatic events firsthand, November 23rd, 1981, remains etched in their memories. Whether it's the sound of howling winds or the sight of swirling funnels, the events of that day are unforgettable for many. If you recall the tumultuous weather on that fateful day, or if you had a personal encounter with those funnels, we invite you to share your stories in the comment section below. Your experiences are invaluable, and by subscribing to this channel, you help us continue sharing these compelling stories and dive deeper into our collective history.